Welcome to Get the Balance Right, a podcast for creative entrepreneurs looking to grow their business in a healthy, sustainable way. I'm your host, Heather Zeitzwolf, CPA and business advisor. Each week, you will learn actionable steps to streamline your processes, increase your profits, and make a bigger impact as a purpose-driven leader. Join me in conversations with CEOs and renegades in digital media, marketing, advertising, and design. Want to ignite your passion for business? Then let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Get the Balance Right podcast. I am your host, Heather Zeitzwolf. This episode is focused on an issue that plagues most entrepreneurs: shiny object syndrome. To discuss this fascinating topic, we are joined by the charming and funny Amber Hawley. She is a licensed therapist and a lifestyle strategist who works with entrepreneurial individuals and couples with their personal side of business. Amber is the owner of a group therapy practice in Silicon Valley, the host of the My Biz Bestie podcast, and if that wasn't enough, she is the mom of 3 kids. The topic of avoiding shiny object syndrome is near and dear to my heart, since I suffer from it big time. Whether it be a new piece of technology, a business management system, a conference, a course, it never ends. As entrepreneurs, we all get excited about new things. We want to explore and be creative, which is great. But if we turn into squirrels and chase after these nuts, we can quickly go down a path of distraction and time suck. Not only does it use up our most precious resource, which is time, it can also drain us of money. How many times have you purchased a course or a book or a software app and it just sits there waiting for you to take action? Money just flushed down the drain. Earlier in the week, I purchased software to build quizzes online. I know, quizzes, right? I can't wait. But I barely looked at it after I submitted my credit card information. My dad is probably rolling around in his grave. See, my parents lived through the Depression, so they raised me to feel totally guilty for not using something I paid for. Luckily, I don't let that happen too often because I'm cheap, but I will have a cloud of guilt hanging over my head for a while until I build a stupid quiz. Most of the time, I am tight with my money, and I do a lot of those 7-day trials to kind of get it out of my system. Now, I might be saving money, but on the flip side, I spend way too much time going down those rabbit holes, wasting time trying to understand the usability of the software that I will never purchase. It's kind of like trying on a dress that is way beyond your budget, but for 5 minutes in the fitting room, you can feel like $1,000,000. You get the satisfaction of wearing the outfit, seeing how it looks on you, but you don't get hit with the bill that could take months to pay off. My latest tech rabbit hole has been CRM software. And proposal software. And, you get the idea. I know, Heather, take it back a notch. Now, this may seem completely out of control, but I'm happy to tell you that my goal this year, if I stick to it, is to calendar block so that shiny object stuff doesn't get out of hand. Now, this is a hack that I've been trying to implement, but my emails keep interrupting me. Ding, 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 you've got mail, ding, ding, ding. Calendar blocking is tough. So I gotta ask, curious minds gotta know, what is your latest shiny object? I know you got one. Maybe it's the same as me. Ready to go? Mine is Clubhouse. Is that your shiny object? Your shiny object is Clubhouse? Well, I'm guessing at least a third of my audience is saying, me too, me too. Another third is saying, I keep hearing about this Clubhouse. What's the deal with that? I want to go on, but I own an Android. And the other third is saying, what the hell is Clubhouse? Don't worry, I'll explain. Now, I am not a Clubhouse expert, but I know just enough to be dangerous. So here's the dealio. Clubhouse is an app that currently only works on Apple phones and iPads, thus the Android issue. It is sort of exclusive in that you need an invite to join. But don't worry, chances are you know somebody who is already on Clubhouse. Just bug them to invite you to the app. When you download the app, make sure you're downloading the right app. There's a project management app with the same name. Lucky for them, right? The icon for the Clubhouse app has changed, but right now it's a dude wearing a baseball cap. I have no idea who this dude is, but that's what the logo is. Now that we have that squared away, let's go to the mock meat and potatoes. Clubhouse is unlike other social media sites. Instead of typing messages or posting stuff, Clubhouse is a speaking platform. You can link it to your Twitter and your Instagram account if you want to message people. Currently, there's no way to chat in Clubhouse, so you got to do that offline on Twitter or Instagram. But the software is still in beta, and updates seem to be happening quite often. The way Clubhouse works is that there are imaginary halls with imaginary rooms where discussion takes place. Okay, here's the thing. You can start a room and invite users to an impromptu discussion, or you can join other discussions in other rooms. And these rooms have people on imaginary stages. Have I lost you yet? Discussions are led by moderators, and they can invite attendees to the stage. On the app, the stage contains the avatars of the speakers, and when someone speaks, an outline appears around their avatar's face to display who is speaking. Kind of pulsates. At first, when I heard about Clubhouse, it seemed totally strange. I know, I'm talking to you about this. I feel weird just describing it. But when I checked it out, I thought to myself, what is all the fuss about? I don't get it. But then I talked to more users and I started to discover the benefits of being on Clubhouse. So once you get through that weird stage of like, what, rooms, stages, moderators, setting up stuff, all that, you'll start to enjoy it. There are clubs geared towards all sorts of topics. In these rooms where these stages are, you may have 12 people, while in another room you may have 100, 1,000. Well, I have not been in a room with 1,000 people, but I'm sure it happens. Here's the thing. Entrepreneurs are using Clubhouse effectively to grow their business. When you get on the stage, you have the attention of the entire room. You have the potential to grab the attention of hundreds of people in your target market. If they are intrigued by you and your message or whatever you're talking about, if you're answering a question or you're asking a question, then they can click on your avatar and go straight to your bio. From the bio, they can click on your Instagram or your Twitter account. See, users are seeing tremendous growth in their business because they're using this platform to demonstrate their knowledge and develop street cred. If you ever wanted to be a public speaker or thought leader, this app is for you. Although my experience has largely been positive, there are some downsides. If you join a room with a lot of participants, you may not have the opportunity to speak unless you're one of the moderators. The moderators, I found out, are sometimes called the Mod Squad. You have to raise your virtual hand, and the moderators will determine if you can move to the stage or not. Once you're up on the stage, you have the ability to turn on and off your mic. This is where it gets really hairy. Unless someone calls on you, it's up to you to chime in when you can. However, this is not easy. Some rooms select people to speak based on the order that they've come to the stage, which makes sense because you know, oh, okay, now I'm up next because you can see the avatars waiting in line. But other rooms, it's just a free-for-all. Based on the limited functionality, when you are up on a stage, unless someone calls on you, there's no way to really indicate that you want to speak, except for turning your mic on and off, which causes it to blink right next to your avatar. Blink, 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 blink. Like they're going, me, 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 me. They want to talk, all clamoring to say something. It gets kind of out of control, and it's like, okay, who's going to speak? It's like whoever can get there the quickest. Here's another downside. Just like other forms of social media, there are trolls and room disruptors. Even though Clubhouse has rules, it still happens. I haven't personally witnessed this myself, but heard a rumor. That's what people call something when you hear it in a room. A rumor. I learned that today. I heard a rumor that people will come to the stage and just start screaming and yelling profanities or politics or all kinds of weird disrupting activities. So I guess you have to be careful who you bring to your stage. Because I love stats, I was very interested to see actual data regarding Clubhouse's usage. On a blog called The Mighty Data, I found some. According to their findings, which was based on users' bios, interest within the site, and other behaviors, here are some interesting facts. Back in December 2020, the users were heavily based in the US. Then it moved to the UK. But by mid to late January of 2021, it exploded in different countries across the globe. The data also shows that the focus of interest on Clubhouse is highest in marketing, art and design, digital services, and IT technology, whereas e-commerce, politics, and finance are surprisingly very low. However, these percentages are based on an incomplete set of data, since a large portion of users have not defined their areas of interest within Clubhouse. In Clubhouse, you have to indicate what things you're interested in. Oh, and another thing about Clubhouse I just remembered was that you can indicate this by using emojis. Emojis are searchable on Clubhouse. You don't want to just pick an emoji because you think it looks cute. It may not actually represent what it's supposed to mean in Clubhouse. So you'll want to check that out. Okay, back to the data. According to the Profit from Tech website, Clubhouse users went from 1,500 in May of 2020, and by January 2021, they went to 2 million. By February 2021, it was at 6 million. Wow. According to an article that they wrote that was updated at the end of February 2021, the Clubhouse app was the 5th most downloaded app in the social media network category of the App Store, right behind Facebook, Messenger, WhatsApp, and Discord. I have to admit, using Clubhouse is kind of addictive. Maybe because in this pandemic world, we are starving for human connections. The fact is that this is a faceless connection outside of your static avatar, but it gives us a way to communicate without the need to put a camera on. You can participate while you go for a walk or folding laundry. It's kind of like listening to a podcast, except for it's interactive. You don't even have to dress up or put makeup on. I have found Clubhouse to be kind of exciting, especially when you're waiting in line to speak and you know the whole room is about to listen as soon as your mic is turned on. It's kind of nerve-wracking, yet liberating. It's so much easier to express your emotions and your thoughts out loud rather than in a text post. I mean, how many times have people misinterpreted something that you posted? That happened to me last week. I think the placement of 2 extra exclamation points threw this person off. They thought I was being super aggressive. I meant the comment to be friendly and excited, but instead they were turned off thinking I was just mean. For those of you that are uncomfortable with public speaking, I think you should still try Clubhouse. In fact, I think it's a wonderful platform to grow your speaking skills. No one can see if your hands are shaking or if you're pacing around the room or displaying your signature nervous tic. No one is forcing you to talk either. You can just go to a room and just chill and listen, but I think it's way more fun to be engaged. If you do go up on the stage, you typically have time before it's your turn to speak. So if you're feeling tongue-tied, just write down what you want to say or ask. No one can see you reading your notes. I am a total newbie to Clubhouse, but even though the software is still in its infancy, in beta, there are folks out there that are early adopters who are now experts on this topic. I was so excited to find Katie Brinkley on Clubhouse. You may remember she was a guest on the podcast, episode 28, where we talked about the 3 big mistakes businesses need to avoid on social media. She is an expert on Clubhouse and leads discussions on a regular basis regarding the topic. She has developed a training course about Clubhouse and a really cool, free, handy infographic that gives you all the info you need to navigate and start on Clubhouse. And she's always updating that. Just go in the show notes and you'll see links for both her course and for the infographic. And if you want to learn more about using Clubhouse, be sure to follow Katie Brinkley on Clubhouse. Hey, and don't forget, follow me also on Clubhouse. Show me some love. I need followers on there too. I'm really excited that I am going to co-moderate a room pretty soon. That's going to be in the next couple of weeks. And I'm going to just kind of dip my toe in that water. And hopefully it works out well. And maybe you'll keep seeing me on Clubhouse as a moderator or a speaker, or I want to be out there pushing myself, and I want you to be out there pushing yourself too. And if you go on Clubhouse, please find me. Let's be friends on Clubhouse. Come on, let's be friends on Clubhouse. All right, enough about my shiny object. Let's move on to our guest, Amber Hawley. Yes, Amber Hawley. Besides being a therapist, a podcast host, and a mom, she also loves to MC events. She's going to be MCing the upcoming Brave, Bold, Beyond Live Virtual Summit. This is a free event happening on April 1st, produced by Speaking Your Brand, Carol Cox, and Diane Diaz. The event will include TED-style talks, panels, and breakout sessions. The lineup is a group of diverse, amazing women with powerful stories that will blow you away. If you haven't registered yet, follow the link in the show notes and do it. April 1st. Okay, here is my conversation with the delightful and funny Amber Hawley. Amber, welcome to Get the Balance Right podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I am so excited to have you on because I am a fan of your podcast. I want to ask you about that, but not only do you have a podcast, you have also been an MC, you are a therapist, and a mom. That is a lot. So for the people in the audience who don't know who you are, explain just a little bit about all those different things.
Yes, absolutely. So my name is Amber Hawley. I am a licensed therapist. I own a group practice in California, and I also own My Biz, which is a podcast. I do coaching on the emotional side of business using kind of those therapist skills. I now run it from Asheville, North Carolina. Mom of 3 young kids. And like you said, my favorite job of the world is being an MC. My dream is just to entertain people and have a lot of fun and then get paid for it. I was like, there is nothing better.
That is a great gig, being an MC.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I just caught you actually talking with Carol Cox on, maybe it was your podcast?
On hers, yeah.
Okay, on hers. Yeah, I listen to so many podcasts, they start to blend. It was really interesting about being an MC. People have to check that out if they're interested in becoming an MC, because I thought there was a lot of really good tips in there.
Thank you. It was a fun episode to do. And I was like, wow, I really did learn a lot from my first time doing that event with her. Doing it virtual, it's so different. Definitely check it out if you want to get paid to have fun.
And Carol has another summit that's coming up April 1st, and you're going to be the MC for that one as well, right?
Yes, I cannot wait. I'm so excited. I'm the DJ and the MC. It's very powerful. The last event was super powerful. I get to keep the energy up, and you get to see some Zoom dancing from me. I don't know if you want that, but you get it.
Topic for today is shiny object syndrome. Woo, this is something I totally relate to, and I'm excited about this topic. For the people in the audience that may not be familiar with this term, can you define it? And you're a therapist, so maybe you have some sort of clinical type of definition for it, but I don't know.
Maybe I'm not that type of therapist. I think what my clients tell me they love is I'm very down to earth. Even though I have the clinical skills, I probably just lay it out in like layman's terms. One of my specialties is working with ADHD business owners. I see it a lot. I'm not only the leader, but the member, right? I belong to that group. But you don't have to have ADHD to have shiny object syndrome. And it's something that they talk about, especially in entrepreneurial circles, is this idea of, it's like how little kids like shiny things and they run around. Entrepreneurs are always like, oh, what's this new thing in the latest technology? Or what's this opportunity? It's that same dynamic of, oh, I want to do all the things and I want to have fun and I want to try this experience and grow this. And there's just so much thrown at us. And frankly, we're becoming a culture of shiny object syndrome. You don't need to be an entrepreneur. You don't have to have ADHD. There's so much to grab our attention. That's my non-clinical definition, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't have ADHD and I suffer from shiny object syndrome. Do you think it's something that people can be on the spectrum? Is there like some people are just off the charts with shiny object?
1,000%. Absolutely. And I think it's something you can learn to manage. Part of being an entrepreneur is having a little bit of that can help you take risks, can help you lean into new opportunities and grow. So it's not inherently bad, but the shiny object syndrome is when we chase something to the detriment of our business, our growth, or we overwhelm ourselves. There are some people who literally just keep overwhelming themselves and never actually finish something. And that's kind of the downside of it is on one hand, it can lead you to opportunity, but on another, maybe you're not showing up as well as you normally would because you're stretched too thin. You're never reaching your full potential. You're just in this perpetual, ooh, look at that, look at that, look at that kind of place.
I think part of it, at least for me, it's almost like you go shopping sometimes just because it's shopping therapy. You just want to go and really doesn't matter if you spend money, but you spend the money, then like you get home, you're like, why did I buy this stuff? And then you just bring it back. I find with shiny object syndrome, one thing that helps with technology, you can do a trial, 7-day trial and be like, okay, I got that out of my system. Or I signed up for AppSumo. Everything I've purchased through AppSumo, I've returned. Do you have any recommendations? If someone suffers from shiny object, is there a way to self-manage this? And if so, how can you do this?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think for people, it can show up a little bit differently, right? For some people, maybe myself included, because I love learning and I love trying new things. My shiny object, like you're saying, every app or every technology or every course or everything that comes past my face, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to do that. I'll buy it. Most of the time you cannot return it. That's the downside, especially of digital products. And then I never actually do it. It's like bringing home that dress and then never wearing it. In the moment, it's fulfilling something. I think there are different ways that it shows up for people and different reasons why they're doing it. So I think the first thing is taking a step back and saying, okay, what is my vision or my goal for maybe the year, or I've even broke it down to the quarter for people, because there are those people, they don't want FOMO. They don't want to miss out. They want to do things. You got to figure out what increment of time helps you. But I do think having a vision for the year is really important. Saying to yourself, okay, does this actually fit into my vision for this year? And if it does, then you might have to go down a few more questions like steps. But if it doesn't, maybe that's something I could do later on. But you know what? I will buy that later. Let's say writing a book for somebody is on their plate and it's, hey, I'm not going to write a book until 2022. Then don't buy all the stuff about writing a book this year. Restrain yourself. Focus on what is your goal for this year. And next year you can go and shiny object all of those memberships and all of those programs and all of that stuff. So I think sometimes it's taking that step back and looking at, does this actually fit in with what I'm wanting to do? That's probably one strategy.
It's interesting you talked about the dress in the closet, because I have dresses in my closet that I don't fit into, and I bought them thinking like, oh, it's a little bit tight, but I'll lose that weight. These dresses still remain there, and the weight has just increased, and I'm getting further and further away from being able to wear that dress. As far as the shiny objects go, I purchased this webinar making software that I've never used, and it's just sitting there and it's making me feel guilty. And then there's that guilt also that kind of comes with that whole shiny object, like buying something. What is the psychological thing that's going on, do you think, with this whole shiny object thing?
Yeah. And what you're talking about, if you can create that awareness, that can be part of that process when you're trying to make a decision. Should I buy this thing? It's one thing to say, oh, I'm going to attend that free webinar and just look. Can I restrain myself to not buy at the end? If I know I can't, then maybe I shouldn't attend unless it's on my list of this is important. This is the thing I'm going to do. Because you're right, that what happens is not only do we waste time, we waste money, and we invest in things that we don't use. Now, I have those things that I'm like, hey, I know that if I ever need to work on list building, I have that course that I bought and I can go back to it. But if it's a thing, especially with technology changes so rapidly, and then you start to feel guilty about it, it's going to demotivate you. So it actually makes you more stressed out. In my experience, a lot of people, the shiny object, it's a way of getting out of that feeling of, I feel overwhelmed, I feel bored, I feel stressed out. And so let me do something that will make me feel good. Oh, let me do all this thing, or let me add this to my plate, because it's much more fun to think of doing something that sounds exciting and new than it does to say, okay, I have to stick with my plan and finish this thing I said I was going to launch, or I need to streamline my processes. Super fun, exciting. You have to almost make it exciting. And there is something to that. I think that as we accumulate that stuff, whether that's physical stuff, digital stuff, it adds to us emotionally. And then we're probably more apt to do it more, which is ironic. You think, but if you don't use any kind of reflection about it, you just keep accumulating. It's a tough one because it can be a vicious circle. I think in that case, it's about forgiving yourself and letting it go. You know what? I bought this because I thought it would be great. But in the grand scheme, I don't know, it's a $50, $100, $1,000. That one hurts a little more. You just say, okay, but I thought this would work. It won't, but I've learned my lesson. And so right now I'm going to do what I need to do and get back to focusing on whatever it is. Because is a webinar program something that you're wanting to do right now?
Yeah, it's one of those things I thought I wanted to do until I got it. And then it's, oh God, now it's just hanging over me. I got to create a webinar.
Yes. And that gets overwhelming. It either puts enough pressure on you where you say, okay, why am I not wanting to go through with this webinar? Like, why am I not wanting to put it together? Because a lot of times too, the reason we don't follow through is there's some mindset stuff coming up about putting ourselves out there, or how will it be received? There's also this, I don't think people think about it, but the shiny object keeps you from failure. It's an unconscious thought of, if I don't launch it, I can't fail. I don't think it's a failure, even if nobody buys it. I don't really buy into that, but there is this unconscious thing about, oh, if I don't launch it or I don't put it out there, I can't get criticized. I can't fail. There's still hope. There's still possibility in not finishing. But it's also stress and overwhelm and regrets. And then it just builds on yourself and you feel bad, right? Nobody wants that.
Yeah, it's got a lot of interesting things in there. Hey there, this is Heather. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. And if you are, if you wouldn't mind, please hit the subscribe button now. That way you'll never miss an episode. All right, now back to the podcast. So I used to have this boss years ago that suffered from shiny object syndrome. And, he would give us a book to all read. And so we would read that book and then we were going to follow that method. And then it was like we would form teams around this whole new method. And by the time we got all this thing worked out, he read this other book. So we used to joke like squirrel, like that was a big joke in the office. And now that I've become an entrepreneur, I can see how easily you can get trapped in this because, like you were saying, everything is new and exciting. When you first start a business, everything is new and exciting. But when you get into the whole crux of it, it starts, the sameness. But this shiny object, ooh, this brings new light. My question about that was, my boss, he was an ENTJ. I am an ENTJ in the Myers-Briggs. Now, I read online that you are ENFP. So does this have anything to do with any of these personalities, or is this just, it can affect anybody?
Yeah. On one hand, yes, it affects everybody in the entrepreneurial world, but you are right that certain personality types are going to be more prone to do that than others. ENFP, we're like the king and queen of shiny object syndrome. We love to have fun. We love connecting with people. It's like our worst thing would be to be tied down to something or to be bored. Yes, personality has a big impact. But what you touched on is such an interesting thing is we don't realize that if we have teams as entrepreneurs, the effect it has on the team when you do that. And I can imagine from his standpoint, like I've had this where I read like Profit First. I was like, this makes so much sense. It's genius. Like it's going to save everyone. And then you start to go down and I was like, oh my God, how many accounts? And then and then I'm like, okay, moving on. But your team is not in the know about any of this stuff. And they're just feeling, what the heck? We just did all of this work. Again, that's that inefficiency or wasting money. And at the same time, sometimes you've got to try things out. But when you find something new, it's also taking some space before you implement, because I am guilty of this too as well. It's not a one and done thing. It's always having to be reflective of it. This just happened where I was thinking about changing my task management software. And so people will share like, oh, I'm using this. And so they shared a different one, ClickUp. And I was like, what? It's like you find that thing that you love. But the problem is there's probably a lot of things that you're like, I like it fine. But is it the best thing, the most amazing thing? And so then I go through all this stuff. I messaged my OBM and I was like, that's it. I'm switching to ClickUp. It's going to be everything. She has to talk me off the ledge. And she's, look, you really should spend 6 months with the current software you're using and then decide. And I was like, yeah, I know this, because when my clients ask me, I literally had that conversation with them in the Q&A session. And I said, just stick with it. Just stick with it. And here I am wanting to do this. I said it to her like, oh, I think I should do it. Then I was like, okay, I'm going to wait. And after 4 days, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to switch like that. I put so much into this. It works fine. There isn't a magic bullet there. You can always change it later. But yes, it's sometimes you just got to say, okay, I'm going to calm down, because I'm really just avoiding having to do the work that's on my plate that I'm feeling overwhelmed with. It'd be much better to just focus on something like that. And so I think sometimes people think, oh, I'm making my business better and streamlining it, so that's actually helpful. That's not shiny object. They think of shiny object as like agreeing to do more things or taking on clients, or, oh, yes, I would love to come speak to your group of 4 people who, I don't know, raise like fancy chickens or something. Whatever it is, they think, oh, that's clearly a shiny object because it doesn't have anything to do with my business. No, you can use technology as a way of avoiding actually working on the things you need to. There's a concept called bike shedding that's all about that, where you feel like you're being productive because it's like, oh, this is a great thing and it's going to help streamline my business. But the reality is you're spending efforts and time in things that aren't really important to your end goal.
Yeah, I went down that ClickUp path myself.
I know. I was like, should I mention it or not? And then one of the tricks that I use is I'm going to keep that in my back pocket. I always know it's there if I do need it. And if I ever get to the point where I'm feeling so on top of my stuff that I want to look into it, I can. But for right now, I'm just going to stick with what I have because it's working. It absolutely works. Yeah, it's classic shiny objects.
Yeah, and they get you with the price. Oh, this for $4 a month? What? I got to have this. I spent the afternoon, a long afternoon, playing around with it and decided, nah, my system's fine. I don't need to spend this $4 on this.
Yeah, and that's the key. Like, my system, is it good enough? Because that's the problem, right? If you're like, oh, this looks so much better. My system doesn't do this one thing, but you don't realize there are going to be negative things in every system. And there's the learning curve. So you're just wasting time. That's why I started the podcast, My Biz Bestie, was about having that support system, people who can give you the feedback, because we do need it. Otherwise, we can be all like in our head, ooh, this sounds so great, amazing. And then I know to reach out to people who are super smart and who have my best interest in mind and who get me, because she didn't tell me I can't do it. That wouldn't be understanding of who I am. She's, but I really think we should give this one 6 months. I was like, yeah, you're right. Okay. That feedback is so important.
Having an accountability partner helps you keep this in check. Technology is my shiny object. And for me, one of the things that I've found is I keep a list of all the technology I come across, and I'll just keep, a link, the price of it, and the features that it has. And I just sit on it for a while. And like, do I really need this stuff? But what are some things that you recommend people do if they suffer from shiny object, whether it be technology or some other thing like a course, or that's another thing. You and I both love to learn. So that's another trap, is that those courses.
I know. The problem is too, it feels like there's I don't know the right word. The word that's popping in my head is like righteousness, but it's not even that strong. But I'm not just wasting it on something. This is knowledge, and knowledge is power. So it can be so easy to justify the spending. And then you get your profit and loss statement. And you're like, holy balls, how much did I spend on professional development? That is a good question though. I think there are sometimes like having a few questions that you're asking yourself, like some reflective questions about why is it you're wanting this? What is it going to help you do that you can't already do? Do you already own something that can do that? Is it in line with the goals that you have for this quarter, this year, whatever? Is it aligned with your vision? I think about one of your podcast episodes where you're talking about your mission and vision of your company. Really really even checking out that, is this aligned with my mission and my vision? Sometimes it's kind of like when I've worked with people with like shopping addiction. Okay, you can put it in your cart, but I don't want you to check out. And the problem is they're going to use techniques like scarcity and time to say there's only 2 spots left, or, oh, it ends in 3 days. But if you can really try to resist, put it in your cart and walk away and come back the next day, ideally, the hard ones to say no to are the ones that like, oh, it ends at midnight. That's when I would say you need to call a friend. That is when you need to call somebody who gets it, who can really give you some good feedback. Now, you have to be thoughtful, because I have those friends I know if I call them, they're going to be like, buy it. And then I have those friends that will almost never tell me to buy anything. It's finding those in-between people who will give you that feedback that you will really listen to. They're just giving you support, but you make the decision. But anytime you can create a little space, because sometimes it's just the excitement and the allure. And it could be that something else is going on with you. Like sometimes people reflect later and, oh yeah, why did I buy that dress at the mall? Or why did I buy that thing? Oh, I was feeling down and I just wanted something shiny or special to make me feel good, but it didn't actually work, because really is what's happening is I'm feeling super disconnected. And I think that's another piece of it. When we're feeling really connected to people, to me, we're in that space where we're probably less likely to do impulsive things because of stress. It's kind of the equivalent of like stress eating. Just being aware of that. Are you tired? Are you sick? It feels like this person, and if they've done good marketing, is going to sell you the magic bullet. And it might even have nothing to do with what you're feeling. You're like, oh, I have no energy. But if I had this course on copywriting, like, what does that have to do with energy? I don't know, but it will work for you. So I think it's about creating space between the impulse and the purchase of that thing, or committing to that thing. Let's also use that example of, hey, I would love to have you come speak in my group, or I would love to have you do a training, or this or that. That is so flattering and awesome. And who doesn't want that? And who doesn't want to connect with people? So it's great. Can I get some more information about it? Creating space between hearing about it and agreeing to it is my recommendation. Right.
It's interesting because a lot of this seems like it is like a shopping addiction. At least I could just say for myself, part of it may come from boredom of having to like, oh, I've got this stuff I need to work on, but if I can improve my business processes by getting this new piece of software, I should go down that path. At some point, there are certain things that legitimately will help your business. How do you kind of differentiate that?
You're right, because that's the thing. One, we do want to seize opportunities, right? We do want to get ourselves out there and get some visibility. Two, there are going to be things that come up that absolutely will help us in our business. I think it's about that reflection process, like you're saying, of, okay, is this my goal? Or is this a problem I keep having and it's costing me stress and time and energy? And this is a solution that could alleviate that or fix that. If you're having that thing that keeps coming up, then absolutely, this is something to invest in. Or let's say you're like, hey, my goal is to get more paid speaking engagements and get more visibility for my company in the next year. And you have an opportunity to do something with somebody who actually is in perfect alignment with the kind of work you do, maybe complementary field or even same. And they're asking you to do something, but they're not going to pay you. The opportunity of creating goodwill with that person is a positive. And you like this person, you know them, you didn't just meet them or read their LinkedIn bio and believe it, right? Then maybe you're going to do that. You're going to do something that, even if you said, I'm only going to do paid speaking engagements, but you might take that opportunity. And that to me is not shiny object. That's actually very thoughtful. I think shiny object lacks intentionality. You can justify it, but it really lacks a reflection about it, because you can get excited about something and we could justify just about anything. We are very clever people. But let me be thoughtful and intentional about this, because I want to be able to show up as my best self. I want to make the most of this opportunity. If you're overcommitting, then nothing really gets done very well. Yes, there are times, of course, you want to do that. You're going to seize that opportunity. You're going to say yes to that thing. It's more about, if you know you are on the spectrum of a lot of shiny object, maybe you need to be really careful about building in that space before agreeing to something. Maybe you even have your default is always a no. unless you think about something, because you have to know yourself. And then there are other people on the other end of the spectrum who maybe don't put themselves out there enough. They're not suffering from shiny objects so much. They might need to be more of a yes person. So I think it's about figuring out where on the spectrum are you. I wanted to come back to, you said the thing about writing the list of the thing and the price and all the stuff. The other thing with that, it's being a minimalist in the stuff that you own. I notice when we're so disorganized, we tend to add too much because we're not aware. One, let's say technology is the thing that you do. Have a list of every piece of technology, every course, everything listed somewhere so that you can go look at it. Because I will tell you that it has happened 2 or 3 times in this last year. I went to sign up for something and realized I already owned it.
Oh, wow.
One time I did sign up and the person luckily knew me and reached out and said, hey, you already are a member of this group. Like I say, I got to look at that. But then I went through and I go through all my expenses and I was like, okay, I need to look at this. But there are those times where you do those one-off purchases and you might forget. If you have that list and you're like, okay, I want to buy this thing that helps me do X, Y, Z, helps me create a webinar. It's a technology. Go through your list and say, oh, look, I already have this thing I'm paying for that does the same thing. It might not be all the bells and whistles, but it's good enough. Until I know, are webinars going to be a core part of my business model? That would be the question I would be asking myself too. Is it worth it enough? If it's like the core thing you're going to do, then maybe it is worth it. The other thing is to let yourself know, I can always upgrade later. Let's say I'm thinking about membership groups. You commit to a particular program and it's maybe on the less expensive side and it's super easy to use. And you're like, oh, but I dream of having all the bells and whistles. Like one day when you're making a lot of money in your membership, you can pay someone to do that. But the money that you save in the interim is good, right? And the energy that you save in the interim. So don't put so much pressure on yourself.
Yeah, you look at HubSpot. It's, oh my God. I don't know if you've ever looked at that thing, but
yes.
Wow. Ooh.
It's a little overwhelming. There's so many options. And that's the thing. So don't beat yourself up. First of all, have a lot of grace for yourself. We are being inundated all the time. Ooh, what if this one's better? What if I've been using the one that's less efficient? Sometimes everything is fine right there. What I really need to do is hire somebody, or I really need to just sit down and finish all my email sequences, or whatever the thing is that you need to be working on. Just focus on that. It's just about having some reflection about what is it you're wanting to do in your business? Where do you want to go? What is a problem that you keep having? Because those are the ways to invest your time and energy.
Besides courses and technology, I would say the shiny object for me also is books. I'll hear about a book and I'm like, ooh, I need to read this book. What are some other things that people get pulled into? You had mentioned people. Like, do you think following people could be a shiny object, or what else could be a shiny object?
Yes. And I love a good fangirl moment. So this is the other question. Sometimes when I'm working with a client and we're going through this and trying to help them and figure out, I'll say, why do you want to do it? And they're like, oh, it sounds fun. Sometimes though, that's a valid reason to do something. Are you fun deficient? Do you need a little bit of fun in your life? And you're like, hey, you want to go on Instagram and follow 15,000 people and you put that in your free time? Go right ahead. If it's interfering with your ability to get the work done that you need to do, then that's something else. But we do need to have more fun. So definitely have those things. But yeah, I've seen people, they're spending all their time like going to networking events, which I love going to networking events. But maybe what you need to do is also look at ROI. Okay, so I'm going to commit to this networking event for 6 months or a year. Evaluate, is this a good use of my time? Because there are times where you go to things and you're like, I really love the people. Maybe that's enough to keep going. Sometimes you're like, I love the people, but I don't know, it's not a really good use of my time. I say like sometimes give yourself time limits on things because then it can feel good. It's not a waste of time to say, I'm going to try this thing out. And then I could always come back if I wanted to. I can always come back. I can always step away. Most things, that's always the case. Sometimes we have to trick ourselves like, oh, okay, just do this. And then you can always come back to this. And most of the time you won't come back to that thing.
I find that doing calendar blocking does help me to stay on task, any kind of like time management. But besides calendar blocking and making a list, do you have any other tips on how people can curb their shiny object activities?
I do want to highlight, I meant to say that one too. I do think that just creating that list of all the stuff you quote unquote own or, have access to, having everything in your schedule, your real schedule laid out, and then realizing what are these things that I'm staying committed to. And even if you don't go, let's say there's that meeting, that networking thing or that group you're in and you never go, but you keep it there and you're like, it's okay. I just know I delete it when whatever, take it off your list. give yourself permission to let go of that group because it is digital clutter. It's emotional clutter. It all is in there. I do think the calendar, really calendaring everything, because that is what I see. The other big piece is people saying, oh, I'm going to do this in my business. I just learned this cool thing. I'm going to do it. And again, we're all guilty of this. Oh, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to launch a membership and I'm going to do this and I'm going to host an event. And it's all in 1 month. You can do it all. You just can't do it all at once. So it's figuring out what's the most important, what logically should come first. Low hanging fruit is usually good, or the thing you're most passionate about. Don't always pick the boring thing. Remind yourself, I can always do this. This is a marathon entrepreneurship. It is not a sprint. We give ourselves permission. I like having somewhere where all my ideas are written down so I can let them out of my head. Otherwise, I'm holding on to them in my head all the time. And then I know that idea is safe and I can come back to it if and when I feel the need to do. So I think that's one of those strategies. But I do think really having an honest look at your calendar, especially my ADHD people, we tend to be like, ooh, I will just spend Fridays doing this new business. Realistically, that didn't happen. First of all, you're overscheduled, you're overcommitted. And looking at that, I think is important.
You were talking about writing it out. So is that like journaling or something? Would it be some other type of writing it out?
Oh, I guess whatever works for you. I have a notebook of it's effing brilliance ideas, and I would write my good ideas in that notebook. I also had a Trello board because sometimes I'm just on my phone and I'll think of, ooh, this is so great. I'll make a little Trello sticky note with the thing, like a blog post or an idea for a new business or a new stream of income or whatever. So I could do that. I have a section in Monday, which is what I'm using right now, where it's things for later. There's this nebulous, like whenever, but I can put it there and feel like, okay, that idea is safe. I will not forget this idea. She will always be there for me and I can come back to her. But right now I'm focusing on this. There's some discipline in that, like having to say no to yourself and being realistic. Sometimes you need somebody else's feedback if you get lost in all of it. But it sounds so great. And this would be so perfect and wonderful. It's like, of course, it would be amazing. And unless you have a full team to help you, it's going to make you feel like crap. That's the other thing. You can't compare yourself to others. There are some people who do a lot of things, but they have a huge team behind them doing a lot of the implementation. So you've got to figure out that thing for yourself. I do think if you had to say no to something, I'll tell you, ENFPs, sevens, we would never do that. We won't say no. But if I say not right now, that feels better.
Besides personality, does gender play into this at all? Are women more susceptible to shiny object, or it really doesn't have anything to do with gender?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know. I feel, and I don't know if it's just because women talk about it more. So I'm seeing more women doing it, but I'm also talking to more women about it. When I think about my biz bros, as I call them, I guess maybe I have some really down to earth, non-shiny object oriented men that I talk to. So maybe I don't have the perfect sampling. Maybe that's too small of a sampling, but I do tend to see it. And I think it's because we are usually multitaskers. We're used to juggling a ton of things. It lends itself to that manager of all the things. But like you said, with your one boss who said, oh, I read this book. It's great. We're going to implement it. I still think it happens in both genders. I don't think it's exclusive to women, but I definitely see a lot of ladies with the struggles with that. And it comes from such a good place. It comes from ambition. It comes from wanting to grow and wanting to serve the people that they serve in a better way, or what's the best way I can do that? And sometimes there's not a best. Sometimes there's this is the way that makes sense. It sounds fun and let's do it, but you got to finish that one through before doing the next thing. So one thing at a time, which is really hard.
I know it sounds easy, but it is hard. Amber, can you tell the audience a little bit about how they can work with you and where to find you and where you hang out on the internet?
Yes. The best place is mybizbestie.com. I do have the podcast. Facebook is where I'm the most active, which is so old school. That makes me sound so old. But I'm trying to be better with Instagram and I am starting up with LinkedIn. But I feel like Facebook is the most. But if you go to mybizbestie.com, you can get lots of information there as well. I have a membership for the easily distracted entrepreneur. There's a lot of support in that membership. That was my dream thing that I kept doing everything but launching that. And I finally did it. I finally got out of my own way. That is another thing. Like sometimes we do these other things because there's a lot of fear and excitement and overwhelm and perfectionism that make us do other stuff. I have a membership and I do one-on-one coaching or one-off sessions because sometimes people they don't have somebody in their life where they can get that feedback or just help them work through, which I always say, I'm not telling you what to do, but helping you ask better questions. But I did create a downloadable for your audience where it's just like a little self-reflection, like some good questions to ask yourself and go through the process. If you feel you are suffering from shiny object syndrome and you want a little support in that, I do have that at mybizbestie.com/balance.
Awesome. We'll have that in the show notes as well. Thank you so much. And for the people who have not listened to your podcast, can you just tell a little bit about what your podcast is about?
Melissa is my biz bestie and host. We started it to help women business owners find their business support system. It was our passion project because we both own 2 other businesses. So we were like, why not? Let's not have hobbies. Let's do this. After she left, I've been rebranding and making it more about the emotional side of business. So we talk about all kinds of things. It's mindset. I do talk about like emotional mindset stuff that impacts our ability to get our work done, being an overwhelmed entrepreneur, overwhelmed overachiever, ADHD. But I also talk to experts in people who can help move along other people's businesses. So whether that's finance or legal or HR, all of those things that come up in business that we have to deal with, that we're like, oh, when I decided I wanted to sell this widget, this isn't what I was thinking about. I was just thinking about how much I love to make that widget, not about, oh gosh, now I have to worry about HR and taxes and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
So it's all the things.
Amber, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was great. It was so great to talk to you.
Hey, this is Heather. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. If you found value in the show, I'd really appreciate it if you gave me a rating on iTunes, or just simply tell a friend about it. And if you're interested in learning more about my profit advising and coaching, please set up a discovery call by using the link in the show notes. All right, thanks so much and see you next time.